Hi friends, it's Lisa Hetrick. This tutorial is super juicy. I have pulled it out from a recent live that I did, and it's all about watercolor techniques on hot press paper. So come on in and let's take a peek. I wanted to just kind of pause for a little bit of nerdy chatter about watercolor. Okay, about watercolor paper. Sorry about that. Okay, and some of the differences and why I chose to use this hot press paper. Normally I'm using cold press. So hot press paper is super, super smooth. So it's not it can be a thirsty paper because it will take a lot of water and a lot of watercolor, but the watercolor kind of glides across it and doesn't get seep in too deep into the fibers of the paper. I like it because it makes it super easy for new watercolor artists or new novice watercolor people or people who are just getting started with watercolor to experiment and get some results without feeling super stressed out, right? So I really and I love it for paper crafting projects because it also works so well with our water-based markers like the Zigs and the Tombos and the Brush Marker Pros. Any kind of water-based marker that activates with water can work really well on this hot press paper because it's super smooth. So I'm going to do a little test too, and kind of show you some of the differences. So 100% cotton cold press paper, I absolutely love. I mostly paint with. I've got a couple painting friends here in the chat. I know that they love hot press. They love cold press paper as well. But what I love about it is the texture. So there's some of the things that you can think about when you're watercoloring and you want to make some decisions on what you want to do for your project. If you want some texture, cold press is the way to go. If you want a smooth look and feel, hot press is the way to go. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of nerd out for a moment here before we finish up this card. Got a little bit of water. I'm a lefty, so I always have to kind of have everything over here to my left, friends, so that I don't block. I've got a little porcelain thing here. I'm going to, I've dipped my brush in the water. And let me move this out of the way. I've got a little towel here. And just kind of, the brush is wet. My paper's dry. My brush is not sopping wet either. And I'm just going to grab up some of this green. Just pop some of that green down in here real quick. Now, what I love about this, here's my hot press paper. Heidi just said, I have the best luck with Fabriano Artistico for my Zigs and Karen markers. Yes, love that brand. Absolutely love that brand. I just started getting back into this Strathmore brand because it was super smooth and love it. But that Fabriano Artistico is very nice. Very nice watercolor brand. Okay, so you can see that I'm doing a wash of watercolor here. And it's very smooth. Now, my brush isn't super wet. My paper was dry. And I'm able to get these really smooth washes, and I can work with it a little bit. I'm going to bring it up so that you can see it's not super sopping wet. So I always feel like when you're working with hot press paper and you might be new to watercolor, this is kind of a great place to start because you can really kind of control what's happening with the watercolor. And sometimes people tell me that watercolor scares them because it is one of those mediums that just kind of does its own thing. But I really, Sue just asked about the Strathmore hot press paper. I do have a link below down in the description. You can get it in a lot of places, but I found most consistently you can get it on Dick Blick or Amazon in the packs, and you can get them at different sizes. I like this 5x7 size because it's great for our paper crafting projects. Okay, I'm going to bring over this cold press paper. Now, cold press paper has got texture, but it's also super thirsty. It is a thirsty, thirsty paper. So it can take a lot. It can take in a lot of water and a lot of paint. But it also has a lot of beautiful texture. So there is a difference between the way the washes look on the hot press paper and the cold press paper. So the washes are super smooth looking. You can't really rework them a lot. Like you can see that when I started, I'm tapping on it and it's coming off. When I started to work it and go over it a little bit, it doesn't really like that, the smooth paper, because everything is kind of sitting a little bit on top. With the 100% cotton cold press paper, now you can kind of go in and play with this a little bit because the fibers in the paper give you a lot of time because it's thirsty. It'll just keep taking water and more and more and more water. The more I put on it, the more it wants. So I love both. I absolutely love both. Today we're using the hot press on our card project because I'm going for more of a smoothie look with watercolor. And I also only want to get my watercolor down in one pass. I know as a watercolor person, when I'm working with cold press, I want to play and play and play and keep adding more color. But for this card, I really want a smoothie look. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. But I just digressed and nerded out a little bit and talked a little bit about cold press paper and hot press paper. And I hope you found that useful. I've already got some green here. And again, I'm going to play and have some fun with this green. Now I've got emerald green here. I'm going to put a little more emerald green in there. Just kind of get this nice and juicy. I don't want my brush to be super wet. So you can see I'm rolling it here just to get off any of this excess water. I am going to start to work with the leaves, and I'm just going to start to lay down some color this way, just at that very bottom. I'm going to go around and do it for all of them, and I'm working kind of quickly. Let me just do it for those two. And instead of adding more color, I'm cleaning off my brush. Instead of adding more paint right now, I want my brush to be wet, but not sopping wet. So you can see that it's wet, but not sopping wet. Hi, Gloria. Good to see you. So I'm using the paint that's already here, and I'm just using the tip of my brush, and I'm blending it out a little bit, out to the outer edge. And where I have areas here that are white, I'm just leaving it because I want some of that white color from the paper to come through. Now, I need to work a little bit quicker because I don't want this to dry. And I'm just going to come around. I'm just using the color that I already have here, and I'm pushing it out to the outer edge. I want the inside of the petals to be darker and the outside of the petals to be lighter. So I've got a wash here, and I'm digging the way this is looking. I've got a wash of color, and I'm loving it. And I want it to look this way. I don't want it to be a smoothie blend. I want it to have some character where there's a little bit of darks and a little bit of lights. So I'm just dipping my brush here in the green again. I'm just going to drop in a little bit of color. Now, one of the things about this particular brand of watercolor is that it stays where you put it. So my paper is a little bit wet, but this brand of watercolor is kind of interesting. It stays where you put it. Now, other brands will spider out. So that's another reason why I like this brand for people who are just getting started with watercolor, because it's not super wild. It's not a super wild watercolor. It stays where you put it. So it does give you a little more control over your outcome. So, and if anybody has questions about that, let me know. Every watercolor brand is different, and it is a personal preference in what you like. Sue just asked, if the watercolor dries completely, can you still wet it and move it around? Yes, you can. With the hot press paper, when it does dry, watch, I'm going to come back to my piece here that's pretty dry. When it does dry and you want to move it around, you're going to get a little bit of lifting. So you can see that I'm moving it and it's reactivating, but it's also lifting off of the paper. So some of it will start to come away. So I would suggest when you're working on hot press paper, if you want these smoothie kind of looks, you're going to want to work a little bit quicker and don't let it dry as quickly as you would if you were working with a cold press paper. So I'm going to grab that piece of cold press now that we asked that question, because this is pretty dry. And so you can see that I'm reactivating that line. You see how I'm reactivating it, and it's that water's pushing that color. So on cold press paper, because there's so much fiber in the paper, that's a little bit easier to achieve. On hot press paper, I have found what I showed you. The color will start to lift up and kind of lift away. You can move it, but you can see it's starting to lift up and lift away. Not a bad thing, just a difference between papers. When people ask me when you're getting started in watercolor, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to these leaves while I'm talking about this. When people have asked me about getting started in watercolor, I always say that one of the most important things isn't the paint, right? The investment in the paint, you can get lots of different watercolor paints that will give you great starting points for practice. The paint won't make you a better painter. Practicing will. But I would say invest your budget in the paper, because the paper can make or break your results. Some of the papers that I like to use when getting started with watercolor, the Strathmore brand is really nice. I like it a lot for paper crafting projects. Some of the other brands for 100% cotton. Bee Paper Company is another great one for our paper crafting projects. But the Bee Paper Company is sometimes a little bit, I have found since the pandemic, it's been a little bit more difficult to acquire it. So that's why I started using some of the Strathmore here and really liking the results. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and do this leaf here. And you can see that I've got some dark color down here, and I'm just blending it out to the outer edge. I'm going to let that dry before I go in to do the branch. So this pear, I want a mix of yellow and green. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up a color here. Got a little bit of a hot mess here in my yellow. Hi, Fern from Alberta, Canada. Welcome. I've got a little bit of lemon yellow here I'm putting down on this mat. So let's bet. I wonder what we can do bet here if I'm going to get my hand stuck in that. I'm going to take some of that emerald green and mix this in, because I want to get a little bit of a, I want a little more yellow in there. I want to get more of a May green like color, like this, like that. A little more of a pear like color. So color mixing, you really don't need a big set of watercolors. I love, believe me, friends, I have all the watercolors because I love all the watercolors, but you don't, if you're just getting started, you just need a small set. You can do some color mixing and get lots of different colors and variations. But yeah, we do love those big ones, those big sets that give us all the different convenience colors, and I love them too. So, but I'm trying to get a little more yellow in that green. So I'm just going to add some more because I want it to be a little lighter like that. There we go. So when in doubt, you just keep adding more of the color that you want to get the wash that you want. Okay, so I'm going to do this as a wet into dry. So my brush is wet. I've got pigment on the brush. The brush is not sopping. You can see I'm kind of tapping it. It's not sopping wet. The paper's dry. I'm going to start from this side and I'm just going to follow a line very much like what I did with the leafery. Just going to come around this one side and I'm just going to follow this line here. Now the paper, you can see that some of this is pretty wet going down, and that's good. I like that. I'm going to turn this way so that you can see a little better. I'm going to use the color of cleaning my brush. I'm going to use the color that I have on the brush, and I'm going to pull it over to this side. Oh, my brush is not wet enough. There we go. I'm just going to pull it over to my edge here. And I'm flipping this around a lot. Hi, Teresa. Good morning. Good to see everyone in here. I'm actually shocked there's so many people here. Thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful that you've all joined me today. This is my first YouTube live. I think I'm doing pretty good. What do you think? I'm just kidding. I'm having a lot of fun. It's not my first live ever, but I've done quite a few lives on Facebook. But here's the thing about Facebook. It's kind of a pain. And it annoys me a little bit. It pixelates our images. It does kind of some weird things. So I really want to focus on YouTube and just kind of coming in live here a little bit more. Okay, so you can see that I've got more color on this side, and I'm just kind of blending it and doing a wash of color, trying to keep my finger out of it, and just kind of blending it over to the edge. I'm purposefully not trying to do a smoothie blend. So do you see how I'm like dabbing my brush in here to kind of create some puckers and a little more texture? I'm liking it. Now I'm going to dip my brush, just the tip of my brush, in some of that emerald green. And I'm going to drop some of that color in here and just kind of show you what I mean about this paint. See how when I dropped it in and it just kind of stays where I put it. It's spidering out a little bit in the water. It's kind of staying where I put it. I think that's very helpful when you're getting started with watercolor because you get used to what your paints can do and you get used to learning how they react with different papers. And I'm just kind of pulling some of this color over and just creating some what I'm calling faux puckers. A little bit of faux puckering here with the tip. Just kind of loving the way that's looking. Liking that there's not a lot of color over here, so we get some color variation between our darks and our lights. And I'm going to set this aside for a minute and let this dry. I've got a heat tool, so I might dry it up, but I want to just go back here and finish off this element. But I also want to bring this up and kind of show you. Watercolor, when it dries, it shifts. And what I mean by that is that it fades back a little bit. And you can use that to your advantage in your watercolor and paper crafting projects by intensifying color in areas that you want it to be darker and leaving it lighter in the areas where you don't want to be. Because we're working with this hot press paper and we're just doing kind of a one layer wash of color, I'm leaving this the way it is because I'm loving the way we've got this variation of light to dark. And I think it's just going to add a little bit of extra dimension to the final card project. So let's go ahead in right here. And let's see. on my palette, I've got this color right here, which is an umber. I'm going to mix these two together and get myself a little bit of a brown going here. The umber, I like the umber color because it's got a little bit of red in it. It's really kind of nice. This brush is a little bit big and honking, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to dip my brush into a little bit of that yellow ochre just to kind of knock back that red a little bit. Knock off that red. I want to flip this way. I just realized I had my glasses on and I was wondering why everything close up was blurry. Well, that's why. Because I have my glasses on. And these are for distance. So there you go, right? Oh, look at that. I just dropped that big bloop right there. Let's just work with it. Let's work with what we got here. And bloop it out. My brush is pretty big for this, but that's okay. We're just going to use the tip. I do like this brand of brushes for their rounds really come to a nice point, the tip. So, and again, if you've joined us late or you missed this part in the beginning, all the supplies that I'm using are linked down below in the description. They're there now, and they'll also be there on the replay. You can always ask me a question as a follow-up too if you have any questions about what I used today. But these techniques, remember, you can replicate them with anything that you already have in your stash. I am never one to tell you that you have to use this to make this happen. That's not true. All of my tutorials on my website are always ideas for you to take and use what you have and make something fun. We are getting pretty close to this being dry. Look at that color. I want to come in and just kind of show everybody. It's still a little bit wet over here, and I might have to hit it with the heat tool. But look at this over here and how it's dried. Oh, I am loving it. And I'm also resisting the urge to blend that out. I'm going to leave it because I like the texture. Now I'm going to... Thanks so much for watching. Please consider sharing the joy by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. And I'm sharing more card and watercolor tutorial videos for your inspiration right here. So come on in and take a peek at my tutorials. I have a lot to share, and I'll see you next time.